Greetings and welcome to the guided tour of Fred Smith's Wisconsin Concrete Park. The Wisconsin Concrete Park is an outdoor museum with 237 embellished concrete and mixed media sculptures built between 1948 and 1964 by Fred Smith, a retired lumberjack and self-taught artist. Built throughout Smith's property in Phillips, Wisconsin, the park is an historical panorama of life-size and larger-than-life tableau depicting people, animals, and events from local, regional, and national history and lore, and from Smith's expansive imagination. Smith was often asked about his grand project, and he once replied,
"Nobody knows why I made them, not even me. This work just came to me naturally. I started one day in 1948 and had been doing a few every year since."
Fred Smith made sculpture within the long-standing tradition of commemorative monuments and memorials, and within the regional tradition of grotto building. Throughout his extensive site, Smith depicted history as an elastic, organic entity in which local and national peoples, events, and histories were intermingled with animals, all sharing a common landscape. The site is recognized as a masterwork in the genre of environments of self-taught artists.
Fred Smith grew up in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, schooled by experience, learning from doing. Beginning as a teenager and for 50 years, he earned a living from the land as a lumberjack. Pragmatic, energetic, and resourceful, Smith worked hard to support his family, supplementing forester work by raising ginseng and Christmas trees, and running his tavern on the side. A showcase for his talent as a fiddler, the Rock Garden Tavern, just south of the Smith family home and right off Highway 13, grew into a tourist attraction with the addition of Smith's outdoor sculptures. Smith's growing yard display became his story about the region, told with life-size figures and animals of concrete, rock, and glass. He called his sculptural environment the Wisconsin Concrete Park.
Right here in town, there was a woman sitting right on 6 horses going lickety-split. Them ideas is hard to explain, you know. Might be something you see, or hear from somebody else. Could be anything. It's gotta be in ya to do it.
For 15 years, Smith immersed himself in building sculpture, first making bas-relief monuments, then building figures and animals in the round, covering armatures of wood, steel pipe, and wire with cement. He inserted pieces of brown beer bottles, mirror shards, reflectors, colored glass, rocks, and other materials at hand into the wet cement. These polished and translucent surfaces caught the light differently depending on the time of day and weather in the park. About this, he said,
"I just like it, and could get it for nothing. I liked it together. Otherwise your work is too dead. The mirror shines. You find things and find a use for them. Don't cost a cent. People ask me if I need things from all over the country. Everyone likes me."
Smith's embellishments add wonderful texture and animation to his sculptures, which are built in openings amid trees around his tavern and home. Nature has imposed a heavy toll upon Wisconsin Concrete Park. Most sculptures have been conserved, and some have been repositioned during the more than 3 decades since Fred Smith's death. Again, you are encouraged to follow the annotated site map as you listen to this guided tour.
This was a place of contemplation for Smith. He called this arrangement the Silent Spot, which was also the name of a pantomime routine on the Red Skelton television show. As you wander throughout the park, note that Smith's female figures wear skirts, which you can see in the 6 figures here, and male figures all wear pants. Follow the path southward to the lion, tiger, and Angora cat. These felines were inspired by paintings by Morris Hirschfeld, another self-taught artist. That's Hirschfeld. Hirschfield, if you want to look up his work. Smith saw pictures of Hirschfield's paintings in a book, and claiming he could do better, he created his own imaginative interpretation in 3 dimensions. Before he got started on the other concrete and glass sculptures that fill the park, Smith built the barbecue. Smith built this for backyard cooking, but also to celebrate the victory of baseball's Cleveland Indians over the Boston Braves in the World Series of 1948. The stonework of this outdoor barbecue is similar to the facade of the Rock Garden Tavern, built next door by Smith and local stonemasons in 1936. The tavern gave Smith a steady supply of beer bottles for embellishing his concrete sculptures.
I just had Rhinelander beer. Only 1 beer. I bought a truckload of beer every time we went over to Rhinelander. 200 cases every time.
Impressed by the drama of the film Ben-Hur, Smith built this ambitious display to convey the famous action scene of the chariot race. Fred Smith's Ben-Hur stands behind the team of leaping horses as they appear to plunge toward the highway from the park. The pines on either side of Ben-Hur were planted to replace large white pines that were destroyed in the tremendous windstorm in 1977 that damaged most of the concrete sculptures and trees. As you turn toward the Smith house, you will pass by the deer plaques. One of the young men who helped build the house often wore a sweater with the common Northwoods motif of a deer jumping over a log. And Smith memorialized his friend by depicting the image on the front of the plaque. On the reverse, you will see Smith's painting of a deer and a dog peacefully entwined. From here you can see Smith's Rock Garden Tavern, once an integral part of the Wisconsin Concrete Park landscape, but now privately owned.
Smith created this monument of the seated Abraham and standing Mary Todd Lincoln, and claimed that his Lincoln Todd monument was the second of its kind in the USA. He most likely had seen the sculpture of the Lincolns, with Mary standing and Abe seated, in a park in Racine, Wisconsin. The monument there was inscribed, "This is the first statue erected to a President of the United States of America and his wife, and the first to Mary Todd Lincoln." Note Smith's inscription, the second monument of its kind in the USA, on the pedestal. Although he was self-taught, Smith knew that traditional public monuments generally feature heroes or important people elevated on pedestals. Smith did the same in several instances in the park, and he placed common people, along with animals, directly on the ground. The historic Smith family home is run by the Countryside Artists, a local arts group. Inside you will find a gift shop showcasing the work of area artists, a display of Fred Smith memorabilia in Smith's Rock Garden room, and books, postcards, and other materials relating to the Wisconsin Concrete Park.
As you cross the driveway northward, watch for traffic in and out of park entrance. The North Garden features a more densely clustered panorama of local history. In this area, Smith portrayed Native Americans who first lived in the region, the legendary lumberjacks who cleared the forests, the stump farmers who cleared the land for farming, local farmers at work, and other regional characters interspersed with an array of animals indigenous to the region. As you wander through the North Garden, you will encounter Paul Bunyan's lumberjacks and Mr. Knox, an oxen team. You can't miss the tall figure of Paul Bunyan, the tallest in the park, or Hans Everson's kerosene wagon pulled by 4 horses.
Take time to read the descriptive plaques throughout this area. These were composed by Fred Smith, and originally displayed as framed typescripts alongside the sculptures. The plaques underscore Smith's purpose for telling the story of the history of the region.
Groups of figures relating to local history along the roadside fence are a familiar sight to those who regularly drive by on Highway 13 on their way to and from downtown Phillips. These include Cheyenne, the beer drinker, photographer, and Deer. Take time to read the plaque about the legendary cowboy Cheyenne and how settlers were changing the landscape. Smith honored old-fashioned farming methods with Mabel the Milker, farming with horses, and farming with oxen. Smith paid respect to stump farming with his figure of Henry Mockowitz and John Putro, two local farmers who cleared away tree stumps left behind by lumberjacks so that the land could be farmed.
Like the creators of Dickeyville, Rudolph, and Wagner grottos, Fred Smith juxtaposed religious and patriotic symbolism in his park. Woman and angel appear near the American eagle and an American flag. You will notice that the universal tree of life image at the angel's feet also appears on the back of the headdress of the Indian with red feathers.
Smith felt a deep respect for Native Americans and the injustices they suffered when the region was settled by European immigrants. This admiration for the indigenous peoples is manifested in sculptural tableaux, such as Indian and Woman. The handshaking represents a treaty that later was unfortunately broken. The grand scale of the Indian, towering over the life-sized woman, expresses Smith's idea of the supremacy of the original Northwoods inhabitants.
You can't miss the big fish. The muskie pulled by horses illustrates Smith's whopper of a fish story told in his tavern. In Smith's tall tale, he caught a muskie so big that it took a team of horses to pull it from Sioux Lake, a lake west of Phillips.
The Iwo Jima monument and other sculptures in the East Garden were moved from their original locations in the area around the Rock Garden Tavern after Smith's death, when the Wisconsin Concrete Park and the tavern were sold separately. Smith copied his design for this monument from the famous 1945 photograph taken by Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal, who captured the image of Marines raising the American flag on the Japanese island of Iwo Jima. Take the time to read the interpretive plaque near the Friends of Fred Smith Veterans Memorial. You will see images of the Iwo Jima monument and other sculptures in their original locations on the tavern property.
The Statue of Liberty and the Statue of Freedom express Smith's faith in those ideals important to both immigrant and indigenous populations of northern Wisconsin. Note how closely Smith's Statue of Liberty resembles the national icon, and how carefully he has emphasized Liberty's facial features, crown, and the folds of her robes in glass.
Fred Smith once commented on his ambitious project, saying,
I put in so many hours daylight to dark, I figured I didn't have much time to do all that work. You gotta get the work done.
Smith's last major sculpture in the Wisconsin Concrete Park was the Budweiser Clydesdale team that you see on this rise near the line of evergreen trees. Originally built south of his tavern over a 6-month period, this group of 8 life-size horses with 2 ponies and a dog was constructed while Smith suffered from advanced stages of severe arthritis. Shortly after completing this tableau, Smith suffered a stroke. He survived, and although he could no longer build sculpture, he dreamed of grand sculptures he longed to build, including an elephant and other wild animals from Africa. However, creating the entire Wisconsin Concrete Park in just 15 years was tremendously gratifying.
If you told me when I was a boy that I'd grow up to be a sculptor, I'd have called you crazy.
Since Fred Smith's death in 1976, the park has been restored with support from the Kohler Foundation, local and federal government agencies, and private contributions to Friends of Fred Smith. Smith intended the park's sculptures to be gifts to the public,
For all American people.
as he said, and as such they are maintained collectively as a public park and preserved through the stewardship of Price County. As you wander back among the various figures he immortalized or along the woodland nature trail through his farmland, you may decide that your best guide to the natural and cultural history of Northwoods, Wisconsin, can be none other than Fred Smith. Like he said,
It's gotta be in you to do it.
Friends of Fred Smith was formed in 1995 to serve Price County in the custodianship of Wisconsin Concrete Park, to preserve the site and all its resources, including sculptures, landscape, and the historic Smith family house, and to maintain and develop the park as a public, educational, and cultural facility. Friends of Fred Smith's activities include educational programming such as tours for schools and other groups, studio and performing arts workshops, development of the nature trail on site, and other activities. Friends of Fred Smith conducts conservation on the sculptures annually and hosts the Friend of Fred Smith celebration on a selected Saturday of August each year. And like Fred Smith said,
Donations appreciated.
your tax-deductible donation to Friends of Fred Smith will help to ensure the preservation of this artistic treasure. For additional information, please visit our website, www.friendsoffredsmith.org.